Hello, everybody. Good evening. Good evening. Welcome. Welcome. I'm just going to give everybody a few moments to come into the space as we see the attendee list grow here. Just going to, like I said, give about 30 seconds or so for folks to join us as we're just 7 o'clock here. And we'll get into the good stuff in just a few seconds here. So thank you so much for joining. Okay. Well, I'm seeing some continue to come in. And so we'll just start off with some housekeeping items. And then we'll get into the good stuff and into the information bit. So, good evening, maybe, good morning, good afternoon, maybe if you're joining us from another area of the world. It is fabulous to be here with all of you today. And so we are here to talk a little bit about Laurier, of course, but also specifically to talk about the economics program within the Lazaridis School of Business and Economics. And so we've got a great session lined up for you this evening, and so we're so glad to spend a little bit of time with you. So I will introduce myself briefly. My name is Dana Montgomery, and I'm the Senior Recruitment Coordinator here at Laurier, and my pronouns are she, her. I would also like to acknowledge that Laurier and its campuses in both Waterloo and Brantford are situated on the traditional territory of the Neutral, the Anishinaabe, and the Haudenosaunee peoples. Few housekeeping items before we get into the formal presentation to learn all about economics at Laurier. I would just like to invite each of you to use the Q&A function of this platform to ask all of your questions. We do have some support on the back end of the webinar to answer those questions for you. So please do use the Q&A function. That is what is going to be monitored. The chat function will not be monitored for questions. So please do put your questions in the Q&A function. We'll be answering questions there, but I'll also be looking at the types of questions that are coming through, and I will ask those commonly asked questions that are in the Q&A in a live format following the formal presentation. And we do have two students here joining us tonight who can give some of their perspective of being current students in the economics program. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it off to the program chair of our economics program at Laurier, Justin. So Justin, over to you.
Thank you. Is everyone seeing my screen okay?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, welcome to the economics open house. This is actually my very first open house presentation. So, happy to be here. Before I start the presentation, I just want to give a little explanation about this picture for people who haven't been on campus. This is the Lazaridis School of Business and Economics. This is where you'd be taking a lot of your economics classes. It's a relatively new building, only a few years old, and it's beautiful inside there, great facilities. My office is located just above that rotunda there. That's where I spend most of my time. Okay, there we go. So as Dana mentioned, I'm the undergrad programs director for economics. I'm an associate professor in the department. I've been around since 2011. Before that, I spent a couple of years as an assistant professor at the University of Manitoba. I'm actually, I grew up right here in Waterloo, so I am a local. If anyone has any questions at all, later on, once you've thought about what we talked about here today, or just anything at all, feel free to drop me an email at econdirector@wlu.ca. If you forget that, it's right there on the economics website. My office phone is also up here. Now, I don't typically answer my phone a lot, but if you leave me a message, I'll get back to you. So when I'm not doing economics program director stuff, my teaching for the last few years has been in econometrics. If you're not familiar with what that is, economic statistics, you'll learn all about it in a couple of years. I also have taught courses in the economics of education, and labor economics, both at the grad and undergrad level. And then when I'm not teaching, I do some research projects, mostly in the fields of education economics and the economics of charity and altruism. So that's sort of what I'm doing at Laurier. Now, I should mention here that joining me today, my apologies, Lauren, is Lauren Osborne. She's part of one member of our advising team, and she'll be sort of helping me out to answer some questions about the program type stuff. I should mention that if I haven't already, that I'm new to this role, so there's a few knowledge gaps that I have, and those actually many knowledge gaps, but Lauren knows the details of what I don't know. Now we're going to get into some of the details about the academic stuff that you'll be doing here at Laurier. But before that, I just wanted to talk a little bit about some of the non-academic stuff that you might be interested in and you might feel like taking part in. So the first is, Lazaridis School has a big co-op program. Lots of students are interested in co-op. It's where you get work experience alongside your degree. So you get to apply what you've learned in school to a job, and then learn stuff on the job that you can also apply and gain experience and use for your education. So it's a nice feature of the economics program and the business program. If you're interested in joining student clubs, there's a huge variety of clubs here on campus. In the business school alone, there's more than 20 clubs in all areas of business and economics. So I'll talk a little bit more later about the Laurier Economics Club, which is the club that's specifically, devoted to economic issues. But there's an endless list of business-related clubs. And if you're interested in any aspect of business or economics at all, there's definitely a club for you that you can join. And if you're interested in looking at those, by the way, it's the link is lazsoc.ca, LAZSOC.ca, and you'll go to a list of all the clubs. Case competitions are more of a thing for business, but in economics we have something similar that we've taken part in over the last few years, and that's the Bank of Canada Governors Challenge. And this is where our central bank, the Bank of Canada, gives sort of challenges students to model the economy for them. And then universities pick teams, do the modeling, and they compete against each other. So they've been running that for 6 years. This is the 7th year now. And Laurier has actually made it to the final in all 6 years and has won the competition twice. And so the pictures on the right-hand side here are of the former Bank of Canada governor, Stephen Palaz. That's the older gentleman with the gray hair, and 2 of our winning teams. Okay, we're not fielding a team this year, but this is a regular part of the program. It's something that you can take part in later on in your degree in 4th year. So beyond just the purely academic stuff, there's a ton of stuff going on outside the classroom that you can choose to participate in if you want to. Now, it's come to my attention just with discussions with various people that it's not totally obvious sometimes how to apply to the specific programs in economics through the UAC website. And so I just thought I'd run through the website just really quickly for you, just so you can see where you can apply to the various programs. So if you go to this is for the 101 students. If you go to the UAC website, you'll see for Wilfrid Laurier a list of programs with their title and program code. Now, this obviously is not the list of all of our programs. I just cropped the economics ones and a few above and below that. But for economics, you'll see 2 programs listed: Economics BA, Waterloo Campus, and Economics with Management option. I'll talk about the details of those programs, but those are the 2 you'll see if you go to the website. Okay, so those are our 2 direct entry programs. Now, when you click on Economics BA programs, it'll take you to the website here on the left. And there it's going to outline the program prerequisites for you. So you need to have, an English course with a certain average. functions, calculus, or data management, and then your other courses to fill out the best 6. Okay. Now, the one thing I wanted to draw your attention to, which sometimes people don't really see, is if you go down sort of to the bottom left where my cursor is, if you can see that, to subject of major interest. And here's where you would pick which of our programs you would actually be interested in taking, right? So as I'll discuss in a minute, we have the economics BA, economics and accounting, and economics and financial management. So be sure you pick which one of those you are interested in enrolling in, okay? Now, if you just pick economics, but you're actually interested in economics and accounting or economics and financial management, don't worry about it. The entry process is the same for all the programs. And once you're here, you can be transferred into the program that you were actually intending on going to, okay? And I'll talk about the management option in just a few minutes. Okay, so honors BA in economics, I'll talk about the 3 sort of main programs. First, the biggest one is, the most popular one is honors BA in economics. And this is where you just get a comprehensive education in economics. So you'll take all the core courses in microeconomics, macroeconomics, econometrics, which is what I teach at the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and possibly 4th year level, okay? And then you can fill out the rest of your program with electives, both inside and outside of economics. So some of the electives you might be interested in taking within the economics program, some of the more popular ones are the economics of sports. That's a very popular one. Public sector economics, environmental economics, and every once in a while, professors will pitch a new course, a sort of new elective course that they want to try out. So in the past couple of years, we've produced courses in, for example, the economics of China, which is a brand new course, and I'm not sure is available in too many other places. There's a big giant list of courses, elective courses you can take, where you take your theory and you apply it to a specific field. Okay, and then of course you can take courses outside of economics, and you know, you can look at the list of courses in the various faculties after that, after the discussion here. A lot of students are interested in co-op, and there is a co-op option available in this program. The way that works is you apply at the beginning of your 2nd year, so after year 1, and your entrance to that program, which I'll talk about more in a bit, is based partly on your grades and partly on your resume and an interview. Okay, so we'll talk about that more in detail. And it's, as I say here in the slides, it's part of Canada's largest business co-op program. And there's a ton of different positions in both the public and private sector. So we send students to government, public sector, and various private sector roles in financial firms, consulting firms, things like that. Now, to this program, you can add a variety of options, okay? The one that we saw earlier was the management option, and actually you can apply to go into the management option directly from high school. Okay, so if you're interested in the management option, which is you take a bunch of business courses to give you sort of a broad range or a broad set of knowledge in economics, you might be interested in that management option. It's effectively like a business minor. You can also, if you're interested, combine the economics BA with another major in the major bachelor's program. So, for instance, if you are interested in computer science, you can do a joint major in economics computer science, or you could be like me. You could do a joint major in economics and French. I mean, it's a combination that's not necessarily the most common, but I can tell you it was nice to have some time to read some interesting novels, but also learn the rigorous parts of the economics program. You can also do a minor. Most programs at Laurier can be turned into minors. So you can have your major as economics and your minor as whatever you want. When you get to 4th year, you can also apply to go into the research specialization. And this is where you take a certain set of courses that would prepare you for doing a lot more research in economics. Okay, but this is for fourth year students. And then there's other options as well, right? So like the management option, there's a legal studies option, which you'd learn a bit more about legal issues. Okay, lots of different options and add-ons here, but the core program is BA in economics. Now, one of the other programs we have is the BA in economics and accounting. So this is actually kind of like a prefabricated double major between economics and accounting. Okay, so here you take the full economics program, but also the exact same accounting courses that the business students take. Okay, the big difference is the courses, the non-accounting courses, right? So in the accounting program in the BBA, you would take other business courses. If you're in the economics and accounting program, you take the economics courses. And the big difference between those is that the economics courses will offer you a bit more of a technical training technical training relative to some of the business courses like marketing. Okay, and a lot of people find that useful, right? So knowing something about how to do statistics will actually help you in the real world. And then there's a co-op option available for this as well. The process for entering that is the same. You can get placements with various accounting firms. Like I said, you're doing the exact same accounting courses as the business students. So for them, your accounting training is exactly the same. Once you're through with this program, if it's what you take, you can then stick around for the graduate diploma in accounting. And this is a one-term, 12-week set of courses, at the end of which you'll be through part of the CPA, I forget the name of the training program, but the training program that all accountants have to take. You skip over the first 4 modules of that after taking the diploma in accounting, and you start with the 5th. Okay, so it kind of leapfrogs you into the CPA training program. Okay, and our last program is the Honors BA with Economics and Financial Management. And again, this is like another double major where you're combining economics and finance. Okay, and the thing with economics and finance is there's a lot of complementarities between the two, right? A lot of linkages between the two. There's many economists working in finance. And in fact, here at the Lazaridis School, we have several economists in our finance department in the business school. All right, there's a lot of overlap in the kinds of things that you actually learn there. And one of those things is again, the statistics, right? So they have a very similar sort of statistical training. Okay. And again, the economics courses will offer you some additional technical training in the micro and the macroeconomic aspects, right? Now it's in the financial world, it's often, in investing, for example, it's often a really good idea to know a lot about the macroeconomy. And in the economics program, in the economics courses, you will learn a lot about the macroeconomy. So it'll help you, even if your end goal is to be working in finance. Okay, so once you graduate from that program, you might want to continue on with the CFA designation, for example, if you want to work in finance. And like the other 2 programs, you can go into co-op. You apply after year 1. And the nice thing about co-op in economics and finance is that you can kind of you have 3 different work terms that you do. You can get a sense of working in different kinds of financial firms, right? So you can see what it's like working in a really big financial firm, or what it's like working in maybe more of a boutique financial firm, or maybe you're thinking about investing versus insurance or something like that. Okay, you can kind of dip your feet into several different aspects and try to see what you want to do once you're done your degree. Okay, so suppose you choose to come to Laurier and you want to know what your first year is going to look like. So what I've got here is sort of a schedule that quite a few people take, but by no means is it something that you have to do. So in the fall term and in the winter term, it's standard. It's a full course load to take 5 courses in each term, and each course is a half credit. So you have 5 total credits in your first year. So in any economics program, you have to take EC 120, which is Intro to Microeconomics, and EC 140, which is Intro to Macroeconomics. It's also a good idea in your first year to take the Calculus for Business and Economics course, because it is required for the program and some of their courses downstream. Okay, so you probably want to take that course in the first year. Now, the business courses, depending on which program you're in, you may have to take them or not. So if you're in the honors, just in the honors BA economics, you don't have to take any business courses necessarily, but you may want to add them as electives. If you're in the economics and accounting or economics and finance program, you need to take BU 111 or BU 121, which are the 2 kind of intro business courses, similar to, intro micro and intro macro being the 2 intro econ courses. And then you also have to take the BU 127, which is Introduction to Financial Accounting. Okay, so if you're in either of those 2 programs, you're going to have to take 111, 120, or 121 and 127. And then you can fill out your electives with various courses from around the university. Okay, and again, I just want to reiterate that this is kind of a common schedule that students have coming into our programs. But the nice thing about economics is that it's flexible, right? So you don't necessarily have to take this at all. You can take EC 120 and EC 140, and then later decide if you want to take some more business courses, and that's fine. So what is your experience going to be like inside those classes? Well, both EC 120 and EC 140 are very big classes. So we teach all of the economic students and all the business students, which amounts to roughly 2,000 people. And so the current setup for EC 120 and EC 140 is about 800 students per section. Okay, and it's in a big giant lecture hall in the building with the picture I showed you before. It's kind of a standard big class, lectures with multiple choice assessments. That's 120 and 140. If you take the business courses, then again, you're going to have these large lectures, but unlike the economics courses, you'll have these required but smaller labs. And this is where you get into things like presentations, reports, group work, and so on. Okay, group work is not a feature of the intro economics classes. BU 127, again, you'll have sort of a larger lecture and then optional labs. And then the calculus is again, a bigger lecture and then smaller required labs. Now, once you move into second year and higher, the class sizes get progressively smaller. Okay, so it sort of culminates at the end where you take a 4th year seminar course, which has at most 25 people in it. Okay, so the class sizes tend to shrink quite a bit. Co-op. Everybody wants to know about co-op. It's competitive. Okay, so you have to apply to be a part of it. Unlike some other places, you don't apply direct from high school, except if you go into a double degree program. You apply at the start of your second year. Okay, so you need to have roughly, a high B average to pass the grade cutoff to even be considered for the program. And this takes into account all of your year 1 courses. You also need to be a full-time student. And you also need to submit a resume. And then if you meet the grade cutoff, you'll get interviewed. Okay, so the co-op office is going to review your resume, and this kind of brings us back a little bit to what I was talking about before with the clubs and things like that. So you'll want to actually have some experience to make yourself stand out, right? If you have work experience, that's great. Put that right there on your resume. If you've done some volunteering, which most people coming out of an Ontario high school have, or actually all people, put that on there as well. And I understand though that, not a lot of people, will have significant work experience coming out of high school. So that's where joining clubs might be, and showing your interest might be beneficial for you. Okay, you'll just want to round out your resume and make yourself seem like a like an interesting, well-rounded person, in addition to having the grades that you need to get in. Okay, and then the co-op office will interview you if you meet their cutoff, and then they'll select the candidates from there. Okay, and then they'll guide you through the process of applying for jobs and things like that, which is at least in part based on a matching algorithm that they have between students and employers. Another thing you're going to have to do if you're interested in the co-op program is take a co-op specific course. I think it's called Co-op 000. This is a non-credit course, it's pass-fail, where you learn things like how to do a resume, how to do a cover letter, how to take an interview. So you can go into these interviews being completely and totally prepared. Okay, it also teaches you how to learn, it teaches you how to search for jobs. It's actually not that easy to do. You'll learn all about that. And this is mandatory for students that go into co-op. Okay, and let's say, you know, you make it into the program, you're enrolled in co-op, you're looking for jobs. Ballpark, about 70% of those jobs are going to be in the Toronto area, 20% in the Waterloo area, and then 10% outside of there in Canada, you know, scattered around in various places. Okay. Now, again, bringing us back to the clubs, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the Laurier Economics Club, because it is our only sort of economics specific club here on campus. They do a lot of great stuff in that club. So for example, you know, EC 120 and EC 140 can be, you know, can be tough for some students. And so the Laurier Economics Club offers free tutoring sessions, and they'll also prepare you with mock midterms. So if you really want to fine tune your knowledge in those courses, you can attend those. My understanding is actually they're also starting a trial of doing tutoring sessions for the second year courses this year as well. Okay, so lots of extra stuff there available to you for learning. That's comes at a small cost. I think there's a bit of a cost to joining the club, not much. If you want to know about careers in economics, they have various sessions on that where they have guest speakers come in, including former students, to talk about their own careers. A lot of students are interested in grad school at the end. They have all the information for applying for that and what the various programs are. This year, they're running a little mini case competition, from what I understand. They're going to run a workshop on how to do research, which will help you both in your working life and in your courses. Tomorrow night, actually, they're having a debate among the professors, which is always a good time. I remember attending those debates when I was an undergrad at McMaster. And then they also organized some social events. Last year, they had a nice trivia night where a bunch of faculty and students got together and answered some questions. A lot of fun. Okay, if you want to know more about that club, just look them up on Facebook or Instagram. Lots of information there. Now, let's say you graduate with an economics degree. What can you expect at the other end? It's actually surprisingly hard to find reliable data on that. So this information I'm about to tell you is a little bit outdated. It's about 10 years old, but adjusted for age, the average male earns about $93,000 per year with a bachelor's degree in economics. Women, it's $70,000. So, you know, the gender wage gap, which you'll learn all about if you take an economics degree, is not absent in economics. Just it's about the same, you know, across all professions. If you go on to do a master's degree, you can expect a pretty significant bump in your wages. The average master's student who's male earns about $112,000, women about $82,000. So that's salary. Again, this is just an average, age adjusted. There's a distribution there. Some people are doing much better. Some people are doing a little worse than that. This is just an average. What kinds of jobs would you expect? So, you know, a lot of students will end up, you know, in the financial services sector. I've listed a few banks here: TD, RBC. This is basically all the big banks, the 5 big ones. We have a big insurance industry here in Kitchener-Waterloo. So you may find yourself at a place like Manulife, Sun Life, or Economical Insurance. Again, the accounting firms have offices here, Deloitte, KPMG, and PricewaterhouseCoopers. And we actually send quite a few students as well to various government departments. So a lot of economists working at the Bank of Canada, a lot of economists working at Statistics Canada, Finance Canada, Industry, so those are federal departments, or you could also work in the provincial government. Lots of options if you're interested in public policy. And just kind of rounding things out a little bit. Here's some notable graduates, high-profile graduates. So Brandon Snow was an economics and financial management student. He actually, we were in the same high school class together. He was the chief investment officer over at Cambridge Global Asset Management. He's actually now retired. He has been successful enough that he's been able to retire at the age of 40. Carolyn Wilkins graduated back in '87 with an economics degree. She was the former deputy governor at the Bank of Canada. Very high profile, very successful. Craig Wright, back in '85, was a senior VP and is the senior VP, chief economist at RBC. And then you probably recognize the name David Chilton from Dragon's Den. Okay, all Laurier economics grads. And lastly, suppose that you don't want to go directly into the workforce. You're considering graduate school. We send about 15% of our graduates to grad school in economics. Many of them go to top schools in Canada, U of T, UBC, Queen's, or top schools in the US and the UK. A further 5% maybe do further education and professional programs. Maybe they'll take the LSAT and do a law degree, do an MBA, a finance, the CFA or something like that, or diplomas in policy and development. And then, especially if you're in the economics and accounting or economics and finance program, you might continue on and get your CPA accreditation or finish off the CFA. And that's it for me. I guess I'm right about on time. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to ask away.
Amazing. Thank you so much for a very robust presentation with lots and lots of information for folks. So we do know that that's a lot of information. And so with that, we welcome you to utilize the Q&A function of the platform to ask any sort of clarifying questions that you have about the economics program or any of the information delivered here tonight. With that being said, we are going to do a brief live Q&A. I will continue to monitor the Q&A function, but I am going to ask some questions that I think might be helpful for folks today. And I am also going to introduce to you two current students from our economics program at Laurier. So if you have questions specifically for current students who are living it right now, this is a great opportunity for you to ask questions to them as well. So with that being said, Robert and Sash, I would love it if the two of you could just come on, introduce yourselves, tell us a little bit about yourself and why you chose Laurier Economics.
Amazing. Thank you, Dana. If you don't mind, I'll quickly start us off. So hello, everyone. Thank you guys so much for coming out today. It's great to see everybody on this call. Like Dana said, my name is Robert. I'm actually a master's of business economics student here at Laurier. So I did my whole undergrad's honors economics here at Laurier. So I just finished up last spring. So I kind of went through the whole 4 years, all 4 laps of this program. So please do feel free to ask any questions about the program. Economics is a very dynamic and robust program where you learn a lot of soft and hard analytical skills. So I definitely did really take a lot out of it. Would definitely recommend. And why I chose Laurier Economics is that I wanted to get a good mix of both hard skills as well as some of that like sort of theory-based approach to like real world problems. You learn a lot about like you learn to think critically about what's going on in the news, what you might be hearing about on the radio, for example, and having like sort of that skill set, you really do get sort of new perspective about every like day-to-day things that you hear all the time. So it really is kind of a cool way to think about the world in a different way. Yeah, and I'll pass it off, and we'll happy to answer any questions you guys have.
Thanks, Robert. You almost covered all of most of it, actually. Hi, everyone. My name is Sash. I'm in my third year in the Economics and Accounting program. So if you have any questions about the Economics and Accounting program in specific, you can forward them to me. So why I chose Laurier is mainly, and also why I chose Laurier mainly was because I wanted to do something in business and economics, and I did some searching, and I realized that Laurier was one of the best schools to do a business or economics degree. And why I chose economics program in specific is because mainly I did economics in my high school, and I fell in love with economics, and I wanted to do something in economics in my undergrad as well. So I just continued applied to the economics program at Laurier, and I just continued doing it, and I'm loving it so far.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, so we're gonna just go through a few questions, and keep the questions coming, folks, in the Q&A. We'd love to hear from you. But this is a great question that we do typically get about how students are assessed, and I think Justin could probably give us a really good answer to this, and then students, you can feel free to chime in. But just for students to understand, you know, how they're assessed in the classroom. Is it predominantly exams? Is it presentations? Is it papers? What can they expect in terms of assessments in their classes?
Yeah. So the answer to that is there's a massive variance in the way in which you're assessed. So in first year economics courses, anyways, you can expect almost entirely multiple choice, just because the size of the cohort is so big. That's the only feasible way to do it. But as you move up, sort of in the second year courses, the core theory courses, it'd be a mixture of multiple choice, but also short answer questions. But you'll also take some elective courses where you might be asked to do some presentations. You might be asked to write a paper. In fact, we have a writing course that's literally all about giving presentations and writing papers. You can also expect some midterms and final exams, the standard kinds of things you would do in university. And as you get sort of higher and higher, I think that the focus shifts a little bit more towards short answer type exams, lots of assignments, possibly some papers, and then right at the very end with EC 481, our seminar course, the whole course is literally one big research paper.
Awesome. So lots of ways that students are assessed. Sorry, Robert, did you have something to add to that?
Yeah, sorry. Just one quick thing I always like to tell prospective students as well is that, like, with those, like, in upper year courses especially, whenever you're working on a summer or something like that, it's often the case they'll give you real data to work with as well. So I always like to tell students that, like, for example, you'll use real data to study the effects that education has on your wage income, for example, and like it's kind of like having that applied learning as well. Is really kind of cool here at Laurier.
Perfect. So there are a few questions, just because there are quite a few options for programs within the economics umbrella. And sometimes I think, students see the Lazaridis School of Business and Economics, they lump business economics in with business. And so there are a few questions that are just sort of asking, like, if you could, really sort of differentiate a business degree to an economics degree in a few sentences, what would that be? The big differences between the two programs?
Yeah, so the business program is you would take courses that are most traditionally associated with business, so like marketing, accounting, something like supply chain. These are sort of business topics, and you learn how to basically do business, right? Whereas economics is more about studying how firms and people behave. And so you get more of like a theoretical, technical type set of courses in the economics program, but you don't necessarily learn anything about how to run a business. I guess I could go on and on, but I'll leave it to a few sentences.
No, that provides some great clarity. And then, so again, with some of those specialization options, a student was wondering what the difference is between taking economics with financial management and taking economics with the management option, like what the fundamental differences are between financial management and the management option.
Yeah, so the management, you can think about the management option as sort of a business minor. You take a small set of business courses and you get sort of a broad overview of what's going on in the business program. Whereas financial management, maybe the name isn't quite as specific as it should be. It's actually just more about learning the details of finance as a field in business. So it's a major. So you take many more courses, but it's more specifically focused. It's focused on finance.
Wonderful. So we're talking about all of the options within the economics umbrella, but some students are wondering about how they can specialize their degree further, and maybe outside of business or economics, wanting to maybe take a minor out from a different faculty or department on campus. So I wonder if anyone could just comment a little bit about the flexibility, some of the elective options that are available. Maybe students, you want to comment about how you've designed and catered your degree to what you're interested in.
Yeah, absolutely. I can start us off there. So like, I know I have a friend who just finished up, graduated with me, and he did a minor in music. Because, you know, in economics, like we do have a little bit of flexibility within your courses as well. So if you're interested in geography or music, for example, you can have that option to kind of take classes you're interested in. I know Professor Smith was talking about, he did a minor double major in French. So and one of the things that I liked about doing like the management option and taking other classes, that kind of breaks up your schedule a little bit. You get to like study other stuff as well. Economics is great and all, but it is good to have that sort of diverse electives as well and kind of change it up a little bit. But there are a lot of like really cool other like minors and options you can have at Laurier. You can take a law option, for example. So if you're interested in law, you can take some classes there. If you're interested in sustainability and the environment, we have that option as well. So you can really tailor your economics degree to however you like. And we do have a lot of options here at Laurier to do just that.
Sorry, I was just also going to say, there are so many options, just like Robert said. There's a leadership option. You can do a leadership option if you want. You can do like international policy. So there are so many options and minors that you can pick, and you can just add that to your degree. I just dropped a link in the chat. You can go and check the options and minors you can do at Laurier.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Sash. That's great. So I think what I like to sort of preface here is, you know, we're talking a lot about flexibility and options that you can really design your degree to, you know, make it very particular to your interests and really sort of define your degree. But you also don't have to do that. So if you like the idea of just getting an economics degree and, you know, not adding minors and you don't have to do that. These are available to you, and that flexibility is there, which is great. But it's not necessary. It's not mandatory for you to do.
Yeah. Could I just add one thing to that? Talking about flexibility. It's not only flexibility in what courses you take, but when you take them. So the BBA program is very strict. You take a certain set of courses in first year, second year, and so on. Economics, you can kind of, you know, beyond first year, you can kind of, you know, mix and match as you choose. So it's much more flexible in terms of the timing of your courses. Excellent.
Thank you for that. Great question in here about, and a few actually, about workload, and what a student can expect being in economics, and what the typical workload looks like. How many courses do you generally take per semester? You know, how do you manage your time? How much time is in class? Those sorts of things to support students.
Yeah, I might ask maybe if the students want to comment on that one, just because I'm so far removed from being an undergrad at this point that I've forgotten. But they're right
Totally.
there.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, so typically, we start by saying that like there is no exact amount of classes you have to take per semester. So if you want to take 4 classes a semester, you can take 4. If you want to take 5, you can take 5. My last year, I took 6 one semester, so there is not a kind of like rigid, you have to take this amount of classes. But typically, students do take 5 classes per semester to graduate in that 4-year period. So that is typically what students do, but just know that you do have the flexibility to take a 4 or 5 or 6, whatever is easy for you. In terms of like workload in classes, typically one class will have 3 hours worth of lecture a week. So for example, if you're taking EC 120, you might have an hour and a half lecture on Monday, then there are an hour and a half lecture on the Wednesday. So a total of 3 hours in class. So 3 times 5, usually have about 15 hours of lecture a week. So that's just a little bit about going to class, kind of learning the content, hanging out with your friends, maybe grabbing a coffee here and there. As well as you might have a little bit of a couple hours outside doing assignments, maybe a couple hours reviewing some content if a midterm's coming up. What I like to tell prospective students, and I think Sash would agree with me, is that when at university too, the time you put in ebbs and flows. So for example, if you have a midterm coming in next week, you might be putting in more hours. But once that midterm is over, you might be able to kind of like fall back a little bit and kind of maybe catch up on some of your stuff that might be going on in your life. So that is just something I like to tell prospective students. But on average, you can expect 15 hours typically of class, give or take a few hours of assignment and studying here and there. Hopefully that gives a little bit of insight.
Just to add on to what Robert said, you covered most of it actually, but I usually take like 4 courses a semester. So I sometimes take 4 courses one semester. I like to take 5 in the next semester. Sometimes I take 1 or 2 summer courses, mainly because I work on campus a lot on a part-time basis. So I like to have that flexibility and that space for me to work as well as study. So you don't think you have to take 5 courses every semester. It's not going to be that strict. You can take 4, you can take a couple in the summer. So there's lots of flexibility around it. And I completely agree with Robert about the number of hours you spend. Usually it's more busier when it's closer to exams and stuff. But then usually you'll be just working on your own pace for assignments and other small quizzes that you have. Once you get into a good, once you get into the swing of things, it's usually not that difficult to manage it actually.
Awesome.
I'll just add one thing to that, which is that if you plan on taking co-op, you do have to take a full course load. That's the only rigidity there.
Perfect. There was a couple questions actually asking about program size, and Justin, I wonder if you could share with students just so that they have a little bit of perspective on how large the economics program is at Laurier and like what an average class size. I know you mentioned it previously in the presentation, but just to remind students on size.
Yeah. So across all of our programs and across all 4 years, right now we have 1,000 undergrads in economics. And our entry cohort this year, I believe, was 315. And that's slightly larger than normal. Now, as I mentioned, in the first year courses, the econ courses are also mandatory for the business students. So those classes are very large, right? So there are 2,000 people taking each of those courses, but things narrow substantially in second year. So your second year core courses are probably going to be around 100 or 125 students. The elective courses are capped at 60 in third year and above. So those are much smaller, much more intimate. That's when you get into some of the presentations and writing type stuff. And then it gets smaller from there forward. So the capstone course has 25 students in it.
Excellent. Excellent. So the questions in the chat and the Q&A function have certainly started to slow down. So I will just do a last call. If anybody does have any additional questions, to please pop them in the chat or in the Q&A, excuse me, and we will we'll do our best to answer them. There was a question just about part-time work opportunities, and ambassadors, if you would like to just comment on some of the opportunities for students to work on campus, that would be great.
I can take it. I'm working 3 on-campus jobs right now. I'm working at the Welcome Center. I'm also looking at the Career Center as well as the International Center. So there are so many different positions that you can do when you come to Laurier on a part-time basis. I know the Athletic Center is one of the biggest employers for students at Laurier. You can find a job in the library. We have restaurants. We have food services, a bunch of food services places at Laurier, so you can work at one of those as well. So depending on what you want, like what kind of experience you want to gain, you do have so many options. You can be a student leader, you can be a campus ambassador like Robert and I, you can be an international student leader, you can be you can just work as a student leader, or just like you can just work, you can just find a job in one of the departments like the marketing department or the HR department. There are different programs at Laurier that are created by the Career Center. There's a program called Laurier Work Study Program. So if you don't get into co-op by any chance, you can just apply to that Laurier Work Study Program and then apply to a bunch of like jobs that are specifically meant, specifically dedicated for students in that work study program. So they have programs, they have jobs posted from the HR, marketing, recruitment admissions. There are so many departments that post jobs for students who want to gain that additional experience. So depending on what you want, you do have a lot of options.
Excellent. Excellent. There was there's a great question that came through, just I think going back a little bit to that program flexibility and all of the options for majors in economics. If a student came into economics and accounting right away and they wanted to switch to economics and finance after the first year, is that possible?
I believe that it is. Maybe Lauren can correct me if I'm wrong on that, but I don't see why you wouldn't be able to do that.
Yes, yes, you can. You can just email an academic advisor like myself, and I would tell you the courses in first year that you could change, and then you would apply for transfer at the end of your first year. But it definitely happens. It's very common, and we can walk you through the process.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Okay, so just to sort of to finish things off for the evening, one of my favorite things to do to close off a session is to ask our panelists if there is one piece of advice that you would give to the students and their families here tonight who are making big decisions on where they want to spend their undergraduate experience. If you had one piece of advice for them, what would it be? Who wants to go first?
What a good question. I can go first. So I went, like, when I was picking my university and kind of like that whole process, I was 17 years old. I remember applying to a bunch of schools and being like, I don't know what's right. I don't know what's wrong. I don't know what to do. And my dad, I remember talking to him about it. He said, listen to your gut. And I thought that was like a really good piece of advice, where it's like you're probably being bombarded with a lot of information by a lot of different universities. And like that can be a little bit overwhelming. And it's good to like take a step back, kind of like take a deep breath, think about your options, think about what you want to do. No matter where you go, you're going to get a great education. And we're just very happy you guys spent a little bit of time with us here today. So we do appreciate you hopping on the call. But just know, no matter where you go, you're going to do great things. And we know that you guys are going to be very successful. And we hope that you guys are enjoying the process as much as that you can.
My biggest piece of advice is, because especially being an international student was like a really big decision for me, picking a university, picking a program. And if I can go back and tell myself one thing, I would tell myself, don't think you have to have it all figured out. This is something I always tell students, because you think like you have to pick the right program, you have to pick the perfect program, and like you have to know what you want to do in your life. A lot of people don't. I came into arts and management at first, and then I transferred to economics. Some people come to different programs and they transfer to completely different programs in the middle of their way. And also, since we have so much flexibility in programs to take electives from other areas in the university, you do have an option to explore the other options you have. So don't think you have to have it all figured out, is my advice.
Yeah, I'll echo that. There's the number of students that transfer programs after first year is very large, right? So obviously you'll want to figure out all the information about the places you're interested in. And actually, I've got a 17-year-old nephew who's applying to universities as we speak. He's going around doing campus tours, attending webinars like these ones, getting all the information to make the choice that's best for you. But if you get there and you decide that maybe it's not for you, like Sachini said, you can always just switch programs later to whatever you figure is the best bet for you.
Absolutely. Awesome. Incredible advice. And with that, folks, I'd like to thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to learn a little bit more about the economics program at Laurier, and for having a great conversation with us. Thanks for all your questions. Thank you to Lauren for answering those questions fast and furious on the back end, as well as Robert and Sash at the beginning part as well. But thanks to everyone, and to Justin, thank you for the incredible presentation with lots of information. We don't want this to be the end of our conversation with you. Please, please do stay in touch. There are so many ways for us to continue the conversation. Maybe that's through the U Community Discord channel, where we're just having casual conversation with current students. Any questions you have about university life or Laurier, it's a great place to join us there. Virtual tours, in-person campus tours are available. Please do come and see us. Get that gut feeling like Robert. So we do thank you so much, and we wish you all the very best. Thank you for joining us this evening. Take care, and we'll hopefully talk to you all again soon. Good night.